Get my power.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Share screen. Start. Okay, here we are. Here's our agenda. Our usual introductions, some club business, Andy's update, and then our featured presentation by Peter Driessen. I'll introduce him later. So first of all, the little pile up here by ARRL section in honor of sweepstakes. So first, East Bay.
Are you trying to share the screen?
Yeah,
or
we're not seeing
Oh,
any
you don't see
slides.
my screen? What do you?
No, there's
Not
nothing.
not seeing any slides yet.
You don't see my screen? What do
We
you?
can't do a
see?
pile up without visual indication.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought I did that already. Oh, I see the problem. Host disabled participants.
Yeah,
Hearing.
I'll make you a host. Hold on.
Okay.
Dave, are
well,
you talking about the section we signed in the last sweepstakes, the section we'll sign in the next one, or where we're physically located tonight?
Well, that's
This is
a
tough.
good question. Okay, can I do it now? Do you see
Yeah.
it now?
Yep.
Right.
You know, Rick, you'll never break a pile up with that attitude.
Break them regularly, Andy.
Here we go. Does this look better? All right.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good.
Okay, so for those who are either in or will be or were in East Bay, check in now.
AK6 PXT.
N6RO.
WD,
6 Delta Mike Whiskey.
Kilo 6, Kilo Mike.
WD6T.
N6 Whiskey Mike, check 07 East Bay.
There again, your section.
Okay, SCV.
6 TV, I don't do phone contests.
Alpha Japan
AE6Y, I do.
N6XI, I will.
A6MM.
N7 Mike Hotel.
Hey, how about San Francisco? Nobody home.
Tough section.
Let's see. Okay, SV.
K3EST.
Okay, SJV. Nope. All right, how about Nevada?
W7RN59 Nevada.
Santa Barbara. Nobody home from there probably. How about none of the above? Okay, nobody here but his chickens. All right, in club news, we have a new life member, Tom, NW6P, was voted in with the 2080 rule. And I'm very happy to announce that we have a new jug editor starting in January, K6DGW, Skip. I really appreciate that. We all do. We also have two new members to vote in. First of all, William Nassy, I guess, or Nacy. Both of these members, I should say, were signed up at Pacificon by Greg and W6DMW Dave. So thanks to those guys for going there and beating the bushes. Let's see, so he's from San Jose, California. He's been licensed, it looked like 42 years, but it might have been, no, he's the one, no, 42 years. The other one was a little hard to read. He has an advanced license. His previous call was WA1YOJ. He was nominated by KK6PXT, W6DMW, and AJ6V. He has a Flex 6400 and a Gap Titan DX. He says he's 98% CW, 1% phone, and 1% other. He lists as his favorite contests CQ Worldwide, CQP, and ARL sweepstakes. And here's the interesting part. He says he's participated in many contests over the years, but he never submitted any logs until CQP 2022. So there you go. And he's interested, he says he's interested in improving his skills. And moving on to the next new member. Oh, that's a picture of his station there that he has on his QRZ page.
Where's the station? I'm missing something.
Whoops. Where you don't see the picture?
I see
And-
the picture. I
San
don't see
Jose,
anything that looks
San
like the
Jose.
radio.
San
Oh,
Jose, first line.
Is
Yeah.
that a flex on the left, actually? Is
It's
there a
like,
box there?
It's just a laptop, I think.
yeah,
that-
like a Mac.
That has,
SO3C,
what'd you say?
SO3C.
SO3C. Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah, okay. I like the fact that there's no junk or wires or anything.
Oh, knobs.
Clearly not my station. All right, next one.
That's, by the way, that's definitely a flex interface.
Okay,
Yeah, Yeah.
got it.
okay, the next new member is KB7IP, Francis Cummings III. He's from San Francisco. He's been licensed, and this is the one that was either 52 or 62 years. Seemed to be typed on an old-fashioned typewriter. So it's hard to read, and I had a scan. So anyway, I think 52 years. He has an extra class license. He was previously licensed as WN6 TPA, WA6 TPA, WB7BKR, and ... So I don't know what ... is, but he was nominated by KK6PXD, W6TMW, and NA60. He likes QRP, uses a KX3 and PX3. He's got an Alex loop antenna and a buddy pole. And when at home, he says he uses a KX3 up to 50 watts, I guess, with a little amplifier. He didn't, like I said, this was seemed to be typed, and the scan I have is cut off. So there was more to his station, but this was all that I could read. Anyway, he says he's 50% CW, 50% phone. Under experience, he lists VHF and UHF sideband contests. And he says he's learning more about QRP contesting. His favorite contests are the SST and the MST. So sounds like he's working on his CW. And his comments were learn, study, and practice. So at this point, we would normally have them leave the room, but I don't think they're here. So if there's anybody that objects to them being voted in, please speak now. And hearing nothing except for some QRN, I'm going to move on and say, welcome to the club to the new people. And at this point, I just want to put in a plug for the RIDI Roundup contest. I'm sure Andy will be talking more about it, but we are again going for the gavel on this one. We need everybody. That's the date there, January 7th to 8th. There's a lot of great reasons to do it. If you haven't done RIDI much or at all, it's a good opportunity to try it. It's a fun, fast-paced mode. Plus, it's a contest that has off times, so you don't have to completely ruin your health. You can try SO2R or 2BSIQ if you have the capability or want to try it. You could work towards a worked all states or DXCC and RIDI. And of course, we have lots of plaques and certificates to promote activity in this contest. So there's one for, I think, 500 contacts or maybe 250, and one for 1,000, and et cetera, et cetera. And then as far as the club competitions goes, here's what happened in last year. So we won. We had 3 million points. PVRC had 2.7 million. So not that far behind us. So we can't get too complacent. We need to really do it. We had 75 entries last time, and they had 80. And then behind that was SMC and then Minnesota Wireless Association. So the point here is just that it's not like we're the only people in this contest. So we better, get our stations on the air.
You know, those statistics are interesting because that's a lot of entries from those clubs. I mean, from us too, but I mean, it shows a lot of participation. I mean, from Minnesota, 53.
Yeah.
I think PVRC actually tried to beat us. That's what I think.
You think they put on a real effort? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not an overwhelming victory. We've won by more in the past, haven't we? Or
Yeah, it's usually been a much larger
okay.
margin. Yeah.
Right, so that's the point I was trying to make, is that
Yeah.
we have to really push it if we want to win. Okay, and with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Andy and bring up his slide in just a
Okay,
second. Stand by. Oops, not that one. Okay, VP, here we go.
okay, next slide.
Wait, let me just get the show going.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about some contest results, particularly that are quite interesting. And Rich, I'm glad you joined in, since I can honor you here, and Bob as well. And Bob as well. These are some really terrific results from CQ Worldwide Phone, where Rich from one of those islands down there, whatever it was, Aruba or whatever island, I forget which island it is, but it's one of those islands that Rich goes to with his new station, and did #1 worldwide, winning quite handily, actually. And then Bob did top US West Coast score, or #2. I think you're just behind K7RL. Is that right, Bob? You here?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And then K3 EST and group were #1 West Coast on the multi. And then at our station in Aruba, John P4 W6LD and W2GD, that Crivelli and 2 other guys from the East Coast did a multi-2 and came in #3 worldwide. So these are a lot of really good scores that I think are indication of how much fun CQ Phone was, and conditions were great, so that you could really have fun on 15 and 10. Okay, next slide. CW Open, this is interesting. I don't know. This is, as many of you know, this is the contest over Labor Day weekend, where there are 3 separate contests. So there are actually 3 events, 3 4-hour events. The first one starts Friday night, then there are 2 on Saturday. And each one is scored separately. And I think every one was won by AA3B or K3WW, just the way they win the CWTs all the time. But we actually had a team, and the team aggregate is the scores in all of the contests. So interestingly, our team came in 5th place. I said 29, but actually there were 25 teams. So we had 10 people on our team, and we came in 5th place. We didn't fill all the slots, though. There were potentially 30 contest slots for each. In other words, each operator could operate 3 contests, so that'd be 30. But we only did 21 logs. If we had got a little more participation and done 30, we would have been probably in 3rd place as a team, which is kind of unexpected, because this is, for some reason, sort of an East Coast focused contest. But I commend it to us next year, for particularly people who like CW. And it's a 4-hour contest like CW Sprint, but it isn't nearly as hectic as Sprint. It's much more of a normal contest. Okay, next. Sweepstakes CW. This is obviously we just had, and Sweepstakes Phone is this coming weekend. These are just some interesting scores I wanted to mention. N6RO came in 3rd in the multi category, very credible score. N6TV did great in single op all band. And what I think is fascinating about these scores is, when you talk about an activity limited contest, look at ND7K. They have a great station. They have some of the KI6RRN and N6MJ are 2 of the best operators in the whole world. They had multiple transmitters, I think, because I could hear them moving around in the band while they were also CQing. And they ended up with 240,000 points. And then N2IC almost has the same score by himself. And TV Bob almost has the same score, a little bit down. But I think I'm astounded by how N2IC does what he does. But this is an incredible result. I mean, to be just almost beating a multi that is made up of these super operators is absolutely incredible. Interestingly, N2IC, it seems to be, he's always CQing around 32, 33, 34 words a minute. He's not really blazing along, but he sure does well. Anyway, next slide.
Are those multis or multi-singles?
Go back. I wrote
This-
down multi. I
this-
guess they're multi-singles, really, aren't they? Because you can't have a multi in sweepstakes.
Yeah.
That's wrong. Yeah.
It's multi-single, but you can make arbitrary band changes.
Yeah.
in sweepstakes.
But you have one transmitter on the air at a time.
Right.
Yeah. And they had several, I believe they had several stations going on at the time, but you're right, it's not technically multi. I'm so used to whenever I put N6RO, I put the MM thing there. So I think that's why I did that, sorry. Next slide. We had a lot of other very good scores, and I just have tabulated. These are just the people who scored above 100,000. If I had made one more contact, I'd be in this list myself. I ended up with 40 points below 100,000, but since it's not an NCCC focus contest, I think mostly it's MLDXCC. PL259 was not really pushing it this year either, although they may end up getting enough logs. But it looks like MLDXCC is seriously looking for a win in the medium contest category, as they've done, medium club category as they've done in the past. So again, phone is next weekend. Okay, next slide. SSB Sprint. All right. So I gotta thank Dave. Dave got on, and our team actually came in second place. We didn't have, I was disappointed in the participation. We only had 8 operators who signed up for teams, including our boy from Los Angeles, our boy from Louisiana, sorry, Jack W6FB. But we actually came in second place. And the team that beat us had 2 guys in the Caribbean, so that doesn't really count. So Dave, I think we should take a bow here. We actually won. In the way I count these things anyway, we won. So SSB Sprint is actually kind of a fun contest. There was some chatter on the reflector about problems with it caused by the fact that, you know, the QSY rule can cause more QRM on phone than on CW, and some people really object to that. Obviously, it is objectionable. But it's mainly, in my experience, it's worse on 80 meters, and with all the activities now pretty much below 3,800. So I didn't get yelled at once by anybody. And I can remember in past contests, if you stray above 3,800 in QSY, and it turns out that some guys have been on that frequency for the last 4 years, and they yell at you. But so anyway, I encourage us to think about that next time it comes around. Next. Okay, maybe Bob or Bob want to talk about this contest a little bit. There are only a few reported scores on 3830. These are the local ones. XX or EST, do either of you want to make comment about how this contest went?
Let's see, I could talk about the multi-2 effort.
Yeah, please do.
Was conditions were rather, on the high bands were good. On the low bands, they really were not very good. Low bands being 80 and 160. 40 is always good no matter what, every time. So 180 was, I was on 80 the first night. I was there the entire first night from midnight, from 11 o'clock at night till the band closed in the morning. I made 3 contacts.
So what do you, hold on a second. What do you actually do during that time?
Call CQ and look around. Essentially, wow. But there was just no activity. JE1SPY was there for 4 hours. I could hear him constantly during the entire time. So it's just a lack of activity. There were several other contests going on at the same time, like the WAE RTTY contest and others that were drawing all the JAs away from this contest. Just as a side note, 10 meters was open extremely well Saturday afternoon. And there's no joke, the signals, some of the signals were 5.9 plus 10 dBs. They were really, really strong. And interestingly, as the JAs went long, towards like 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the band went all the way down to Southeast Asia, and DUs and HSs were loud.
Wow.
So this is a good sign for the future. So all in all, it was a lot of fun, and thanks to everybody that helped out.
And thanks, thanks, Bob, for those 3 Qs.
Yes. Was that you?
Yeah, it was me with 3 different call signs. Yep.
Thanks for feeling sorry for me. So,
Bob XX, do you have anything you want to add or not?
Well, Bob is right. It's a 30-hour contest, and 10 hours is all I could stand. But 10 meters was great. 15 was even better. For points anyway, or well, actually 10 was better for me for points because they count double. But anyway, this is a dying contest. The magazine that sponsors it, I believe, is out of business now. They declared bankruptcy a few years ago, so it needs more activity, and all the participants are dying off. But anyway, We showed up, so we did our part.
Okay, well, thanks for upholding the honor of the club. Next slide. I think that's the end of the content. I do have one other thing I want to report on, but these are upcoming contests. We are obviously in the contest season now, right? So sweepstakes, phone coming up the next weekend, CQ Worldwide CW, which is going to be a great contest, I hope. If the conditions are as good as they were, there's going to be a lot of fun. Then the next one after that is the ARL 160, then the ARL 10-meter contest. Now, Chris, N6WM has agreed to flog the 10-meter contest because we can win that. We have won it in the past as a club. It seems odd that you could actually win it from California, but we have done that. And I don't know if Chris, how you plan to get everybody motivated, but I think this is a fun contest. Obviously, with 10 meters, we've been waiting for years for 10 meters to really come into its own, and now it is. So I think we'll be hearing more from Chris. I don't know, Chris, do you want to say anything about that right now or not?
Yeah, I mean, most people know my MO. I'm a highly motivated flogger, and we'll start a list and we'll try and reach critical mass. This is a very, very fun contest. It's a dual mode contest. Should you choose to operate both modes, it really is a contest of excellence for both the CW and phone modes. So I hope that other people are as excited about having the 10-meter band open now and operating this contest as I am. The amount of QSOs that can be made in this contest are phenomenal. It's just crazy. So
what is the
I'm
activity
looking forward to
mostly from here? What do you end up working mostly?
It depends on what part of the solar cycle, but at the absolute solar peak, it's just it's off the hook, right? Mm-hmm. As we build up the solar peak, there's a lot of it's a domestic contest with some interesting multipliers. They've added the Mexican states as multipliers over the last half decade or so. So there's interesting stuff going on, but it's a lot of fun. And just about everybody that I talk to who likes to operate this contest all repeat the same thing. This contest is fun. It's fun because you can work somebody in CW and work them on phone 10 minutes later and say thanks for the CWQ. So we'll try and build critical mass. Let's try and take this one home. I think we can do it. So
yeah, I had that experience in CQP last year, not this recent one, but 2021, where my last multiplier was New Hampshire of all things, and I worked the guy in CW, and then ran out to tell my wife, I got them all, I got all the mults, and came back 10 minutes later, went on phone, and he called me immediately. So I have 2 consecutive contacts from him. So it is kind of fun to, it's one of the reasons I think Rich likes phone contests, because it is kind of friendly when you actually talk to people. All right, following weeks, another 160-meter contest for those of you who are aficionados. The ARL Rookie Roundup, I'm not sure, I put that on the list. I'm not sure it applies to anybody who's on the and the participants in the meeting right now, but in theory it might, or might have years ago. And then January 7th, 8th is our Riddy Roundup that Dave was talking about, that will also be flogging as a focus contest. So a lot of interesting stuff coming up. So I want to mention for a moment about another interesting thing. It's not on any of the slides.
Hey, Andy, before you go on, I just wanted to jump in and say and remind everybody that given our current our speaker tonight, that also December 17th is the winter RAC contest.
Right. Ooh, okay, thank you. I didn't put it on the list. I probably should put it there instead of the Rookie Roundup. It's probably of more interest, frankly. Thank you. So I got a call this morning from Rusty, W608T, who is, as we all know, used to live here and now lives in Washington. And he was calling to explore the interest of our club. He couldn't be here tonight because he's in a bridge tournament or something. So anyway, but he was hoping that the club would get behind a WRTC thing that's going on in January. I had not heard of this. So I told him that, well, we are having a meeting tonight, which he knew. That's why he was calling me. And I think he was trying to reach Dave. I think he may have called to talk to John Miller also. But what WRTC is doing, which does sound like a lot of fun, is for the month of January, they're getting people with special call signs on all around the world. And Rusty sent me this list. You can't find it. It's just a list, but it's a list of all sorts of people who have call signs ending WRTC, GB2 WRTC, DA22, CQ7 Portugal, EF2 WRTC, II1 WRTC, things like that. So they're going to be dozens of stations with the prefix WRTC or suffix WRTC. Now, we can't do that in the US apparently. And so the US stations have the suffix W. So for our area, which is according to WRTC, the way they're doing this one now, we are North America 9. That's our official area. And the call sign that's appropriate is N6W, November 6 Whiskey, which Rusty has procured for our area. And our area apparently is California, Nevada, Arizona, and Utah. So there will be, so we collectively have available a special call sign N6W. The approach of this event, it's you know, it's not really a contest, it's kind of an operating event for the entire month of January. Is with any call sign, you can be on 5 bands, 80 through 10, phone and CW. In theory, you could, the holder of any call sign like N6W could have 10 stations on the air. It's a little bit like the club stations for IARU where you have distributed stations. So we could have literally 10 different stations on any given hour on those 5 bands, phone and CW, running pileups, and then people are competing who work you are competing or work us are competing to get awards, which they can get for working actually a fairly small number of these special event stations. Among the different call sign holders of the special event stations, there is sort of a competition, which Rusty was all excited about. Again, sort of like the IARU headquarters stations where they try to make as many contacts as they can. So somebody may be very interested in trying to get as many N6W contacts as we can. We could decide as a club, we want to really push this and get other people on as well and have fun. So Rusty is exploring whether we are interested in doing this. The reason he was calling,
I don't know, 8:30, maybe a bit later.
Our team captain
Depends
is
on how much questions there are.
Hello?
It's QRM, I think.
Oh, QRM, okay. What was I saying? I lost my train of thought there. But anyway, I know what it was. That KI6RRN is the team captain for NA9. And I think the sort of the default situation is the team captain kind of organizes this stuff in their region or their country. For some reason, he can't do that. As Dave mentioned, he's been up in Alaska lately. I'm not sure what he's doing, but in any event, he couldn't do it. And so they contacted Rusty and asked him if Rusty would be interested in organizing stuff. So Rusty sent me a couple of emails, which I can pass around with the rules of this. It's really a publicity event, but it is an operating event. And it'd be kind of fun to get on the air for a few hours as N6W on some mode and just run pileups for a while. What we need to do this is somebody who is interested and is willing to be an organizer. Because what we need is a giant spreadsheet of all the hours in January and who's going to be on what and when. And people could sign up and pick out slots of kind of like doing a multi-op operating schedule. You know, I'd like to operate this Friday afternoon on 10 meters for 3 hours or something. The logging will be online with something called Ham Award, which I was not familiar with, but apparently exists. There's something called Ham Contest and Ham Award. And it's apparently it's an online scoreboard kind of program, which apparently interfaces with various loggers like N1MM. So it's relatively transparent, or apparently you can use it without a logging program, just log into the internet. So anyway, Rusty was calling to explore whether we have an interest in doing this. I think from my perspective as an operator, I think it'd be a lot of fun to, you know, just spend a few hours doing this. If we're going to do it, we need somebody who's enthusiastic and technically adept at dealing with the online logging aspects and the internet parts of it to line up things, line up operators. They don't have to be in our club. It's not really a club event per se. They can be anywhere in the region. They can be in Southern California, they can be in Nevada, be in Utah, be anywhere. So I wanted to raise it. I told Rusty I would broach this with the club and see if we have any enthusiasm. it's the sort of thing that somebody like N6WM would do a great job of organizing, or W9KKN, or, kind of computer adept, younger, enthusiastic people. So, but there may be other people who are computer adept and older enthusiastic.
Nice try with the name drop, Andy, but I'll pass.
Well, I was just saying somebody like you, Chris. Doesn't have to be you, but it will take some effort to organize. I think the operating part, once it gets organized, would be lots of fun and be easy for us to do, and it'd be a good thing to do. So I don't know if anybody has any interest or idea of how we might pursue this. If we want to pursue it, we don't have to at all. This is just something we're talking about, but it would be kind of fun to do. It's apparently going to go on for the entire month of January, and there are people around the world who are going to take it quite seriously. So does anybody have any thoughts about it?
I'd write it up and send a note out to the Reflector and see if we can get a volunteer.
We can certainly do that. Okay, so you're volunteering already, Chris. That's good. I like
No, never again. I was in the Navy. Never again volunteer yourself.
But do people think it's a good idea and something we should pursue if we can find a flogger?
We've had events like this in the past that were lots of fun. There was the I don't know, the ARRL anniversary, I think, and there have been a number of events, that I know that W7RN has been involved with and stuff like that, and everybody tends to have a good time. So I would definitely see if we can get somebody to organize a matrix of, maybe it'll be easy enough to just get somebody to get something where people could just sign up on their own, and then it could be looked at. But I definitely look for a volunteer out on the Reflector, because I'm as enthusiastic as I am. I'm actually not very OCD about spreadsheets. So I'm not type A.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess I'll tell Rusty that we discussed it and nobody raised their hand. However, people think it would be a good idea to do if we can find the person to do it. Is that a fair estimate?
Andy, W6DMW here.
Yeah.
Send me the info and I'll ponder it.
Ah, there we go. Hold up, wait, let me turn on your camera and hold up your hand.
Nope.
Oh, come on, David.
Nope.
No more
Okay.
incognito.
All right, I'll forward you. I have 3 emails from Rusty. And as I said, the more, I was initially a little, he just calls me and just sort of out of the blue, we're talking about this. And my initial reaction was a little mixed, but the more I think about it, the more I think participating in it would be a lot of fun. And that's for the whole month. So you could sign up for 5 hours out of, however many there are in a month. So, okay. Thanks, David. I appreciate that. Anybody else in a similar boat without holding up their hand would like to receive information?
And if you could forward it to Greg, that would be great. PXT would really appreciate it.
He's volunteering somebody else too.
I'm kidding, Greg. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I was thinking Chief Bob is a natural for this stuff too, but no, he held up his hand. I saw it. No. All right, sorry. Okay, well, anyway, I guess that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andy. All right, well, I see Peter's here, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce him, and we can start that part of the presentation. So Peter's somebody I've known for, I don't know, 30-something years, more like almost 40 years. I met him at the University of Victoria on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, where he's a professor of electrical engineering. And he also has a cross appointment in music, which is how I ended up meeting him, because my collaborator, Andrew Schloss, is a professor of music there. And we were working on an instrument called the radio drum that used radio signals to position 2 mallets in space above a surface. And anyway, then I discovered that Peter was a ham, and not only that, but was teaching classes in radio, using GNU radio and SDRs. And anyway, one thing led to another. But getting back to his bio, so says here he worked after graduating. He graduating college. He worked for 5 years designing modems for data communication. He spent 10 years as part of AT&T Bell Labs, working on wireless communication systems, and then 5 years at Massey University in Wellington, New Zealand. Peter was first licensed in 1969. It says learned about contesting at the University of British Columbia at the Amateur Radio Club, VE7 UBC. That's in Vancouver, I think, and at the first VE7 multi-tower superstation, VE7WJ. And then he was elected director of the precursor of RAC, at which time he created the RAC contests and awards. And he's also done DXing. He participated in the ZL7 AAA DXpedition to Chatham Island. Peter's done, a wide variety of things, and I look forward to hearing about how he's managed to merge his research efforts with his contesting efforts. So why don't you go ahead and share your screen, Peter, and unmute yourself.
Thank you, David, and thank you for inviting me to come and talk to the group. And I feel honored and privileged to be meeting you all. And I surveyed some of the call signs in the gallery while I first logged on. And of course, I recognize many of the calls, so that's great. I'll see if I can figure out how to share the screen. It says share screen here. So even though I give lectures all the time at the university, and I did it in COVID all remotely, I'm still challenged with how to make this work. I think I can just pick my presentation. Let's see if that works. So you won't see me anymore, which is probably a good thing. And you'll see the screen. So let me know if that's working.
Okay, I see page 2 of your bio.
Okay, so that's good. So now I want to make sure that I can see what I'm talking about too. That would be helpful. And so I'm going to make the screen a little bigger. And probably that doesn't change much for you. I got to put this in presentation mode now, I think. So let's see how I do that. File, no, not that. Home, presentation mode.
F5.
I'm sorry, F5. Okay, thank you. So that's what I'll do, F5. Did it work? I pushed F5. I'm in the right window.
It's like Microsoft, something that works fine, they change.
Just click slideshow.
Slideshow. Let's see somewhere there. It says slideshow. It's all there. Let's see from the beginning. Okay, wonderful. Okay, can you see that? I can see it.
Yeah, we see the one that has the next slide shown, which is probably not the one that we're supposed to be seeing.
That's the presenter's
Okay.
window.
So I got to swap it somehow. All right. Sorry about this, guys. This is end slideshow. I'll move my screen to the other side. And then I'll
Stop
try
sharing
to go
and
back
share the other window.
and share the other window. And so let's do that. And now I'll go back to slideshow and from beginning, see what that does. It didn't work.
That looks good.
Oh, do you see me now, the big screen?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So that's me. David just told us about me. And so what I want to talk about is, as a university professor, I'm supposed to be thinking about new ideas. And as a radio ham, I'm supposed to be having fun. So I thought I would combine the two. And so the talk first starts about the research project, which is using contest signals, CW and FTA, which are signals that are on the air, available for free, and I wanted to use them for a scientific purpose to map waves in the ionosphere. There's waves moving around, and we can even detect things related to climate change and other things in the ionosphere. It's quite remarkable. The ionosphere is, of course, we use it to communicate, but you can think of it as a very sensitive sensor. It senses what's going on in the world because it's a very thin layer of these ions way up 100 miles or so up. And so that's a very sensitive thing that can detect very small perturbations in what's going on in the world. And so understanding it is very interesting. So what I'm going to talk about first is a bit of software radio and talk about the long wavelength array, about interferometry, and go there. Then the next part of the talk is, having done some science, now it's time to have some fun, and let's talk about contesting. And how do you design good contest rules? And so I designed the Canada Day contest rules way back in the 1980s. And I'll talk a bit about how that went and how that evolved. And the second example, which is the new contest now, are the ARL Digi, and why does it say possible future? Do I have the wrong file here? It is the CQ Worldwide Digi contest, which is there. I'm now worried that I have an old version of the file. Anyway, talk outline part 3. So the part 3 is FT4, FT8 digital contests. What are the maximum rates and strategies you can get? And what's a valid QSO, and the number of cycles that per QSO determines the maximum rate. So that's where we're going to talk about building a digital contest and having fun at it. So let's start with part 1. Now, before I get started in that, talks are much more fun when people interrupt and when they ask questions, just like in the classroom. It's much more fun. The worst thing to do is to go to a class, stand in front of the class, talk for an hour, and nobody's asked you anything, and you walk out and you have no clue whether anybody understood the word you were saying or understood everything you were saying, or more likely in between. So anybody, please pipe up, ask me a question, argue with me, disagree with me. I love it. It's much more fun that way. So software radio. I'm talking about that just to set the stage a bit. So we all know the waterfall, the spectrogram that we see on our radios. But how do we make that picture? Where does that come from? And so I've got a diagram here that shows what we do is we take the signal that's there, the real signal, time domain signal from the antenna. And what we do is we divide it up. It's all sampled now. It's a software radio, so it's all digital samples in the computer. And so we can easily chop that signal up into overlapping blocks of a certain length. And you can see the blocks there. And then what we do is we window the blocks. We emphasize the center of the block and we kind of depress the edges of the block. But they're overlapping. So when you overlap all of them, you don't lose anything because you're getting a bit of each of 2 blocks together at any one time. So if you look at the second block, you can see that there's a bit of going down, a bit of going up. So the total is constant. Then what you do is you take this thing called the fast Fourier transform. This is the mathematical operation that I'm going to try to explain a bit. But basically, it pulls the frequencies out of whatever is in there. And then what you do is, having found the frequencies in there, you color code the spectrum amplitude, and you write a scanning line. And then you go back. So that's what you see in this picture. So you can see the CW at the low end of the band, and you see some digital stuff around 7055. Then you see the FT8 around 7075, and you see another weird digital signal. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's 7090, and then a bunch of single sideband signals above that. So that's what the spectrum shows. So these are, of course, scanning lines, and that is going to live move. And so every block that you see there is a scanning line in the video. And so any signal, of course, is a sum of sinusoids. And you add up all the sinusoids, the sines and cosine waves, and you get a signal. So that's what we do with this fast Fourier transform. So Fourier is the name of the guy who first thought of it way back in 1800 something. But the picture of the fast Fourier transform is it's a correlator. And these 2 pictures try to show you what goes on. You're trying to find the frequencies in the signal. That's the job. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take a whole bunch of sine waves at different frequencies, 1 frequency at a time, and you're going to basically multiply add. So the correlation means you multiply the sample of the F1 signal, which is the green one. I hope it shows up as green on your screen, with a sample of the frequency 2 wave, which is blue, to get a new sample, red. And then you repeat that for all the samples. So you see the red waveform. And then you add up all the samples, add up all the red samples. So you'll see that when F1 is F2 on the left, when you add up all the red samples, you end up with something, because all the red samples are positive. They're all above 0. So when you add them all up, you're going to get some positive number. So there's a frequency there. You've found that frequency. On the right-hand side, F1 is not equal to F2. There's a red, there's a blue, and a green one. You can see they're different frequencies. So when you add them up together, the red one kind of goes up and down like you see. And so when you add up all the red samples, you get 0. So there's no frequency. So that's basically the way that the fast Fourier transform works. It sifts out or finds the frequencies in the signal. We're going to see this idea come up again a little bit later. And then there's complex signals, kind of my favorite thing. It's a way of looking at signals in real and imaginary domain. And I won't get into that much unless there's questions about it, but it's a way of seeing any sine wave as these 2 oscillating helixes, the red, the blue, and the green, and one goes in clockwise and one goes counterclockwise, and you add them together, and that makes a sine wave. Okay, so the next part, what we want to do is we want to map the waves in the ionosphere. So we're going to look at, well, what tools are we going to use to do that? So this is a fun antenna array that's out in New Mexico. So all these little dipoles are there. You see them all scattered about through the desert. And that's the long wavelength array. There's 256 of these elements. Now you look at that and you say, gee, they're kind of all randomly spaced around. They're not even organized properly in a nice grid. They're just random. And there's a reason for that. One of those antennas looks like this. It's basically an inverted V, a broadband inverted V, and has two polarizations. So you can see the sort of thick wire idea of a dipole, a thick dipole that spreads out, and it's bent down into an inverted V. So there's, the two legs of the inverted V, and then there's another one at 90 degrees to it. So that's the dual polarization inverted V broadband dipole. And of course, that antenna is very low to the ground, so it's not going to be great for DXing at low angles, but it's great for looking up at the sky, looking at the radio waves coming from the sky from high angles. So that's that antenna, and there's lots of them. There's also another one of these in Owens Valley, closer to home here at Caltech, up by Bishop, California, 250 miles north of LA. And they also have one there. And just to give you a sense of it, they went a little bigger. They got 288 cross dipoles, and it's 200 meters diameter. The band pass is anywhere from 27 to 85. It can go down to about 10 megahertz and up to 85. And then there are these correlators again. You see these correlators come back. And what they do is they find the cross correlation between the antennas. So I'll refer to that later. And we can see the whole hemisphere with that. So this is what it does. So using that antenna array, the long wavelength array in New Mexico, you can make television, you can make pictures, you can make images, you can make video. And I'll play video a little bit later. So this is what the sky looks like at 30 megahertz. And so you see the bright spots there that are the bright radio sources at 30 megahertz. So little did you know when you listen on 10 meters that you might be pointing at one of these radio sources. And so if the band is noisy, maybe it's not because of a local noise source, but because of some sky source that is interfering with you. So I thought that was an interesting picture. And even at low angles, depending on the time of day, some of those sky sources will be there at low angles, right in your beam and blocking out your DX pileup. So how do we make that picture? How do we make that all sky picture of the all the signals coming from the sky at high angles and even low angles? We do that using an idea called interferometry. And that's sort of the holy grail of radio astronomy is interferometry. And I'm not going to pretend to teach you all the nuances of interferometry in this short talk, but I wanted to introduce the idea because it's a different concept from what we do with antenna arrays, which are all nicely organized and in a grid or a square. Think of your moon bounce arrays where you've got a square array of antennas. All the antennas are nicely lined up. They're not randomized like they are here. So interferometry, what is that? Well, we know about two antennas creating an interference pattern. That's the, you put your antenna up on the hill there, you're going to get the direct ray and you're going to get the reflected ray off the seat surface or off the ground. And you're going to get a radiation pattern that's got peaks and valleys in it, nulls and peaks. And so that's one of the challenges is that if the DX happens to come in at an angle that is in between your two lobes, then you might miss that. And that's where stacked arrays are nice because then you get more lobes to work with. So that's the interference pattern we know about. And so the key idea of interferometry is in this picture, which took me some time to find because I was too lazy to draw it myself. So this picture is showing you the correlation. So that sine wave is kind of the correlation result that we saw before what I showed you with the Fourier transforms. That's the same multiply thing. And then you add them all together. But what's going to happen is that you're looking at the pattern from two antennas. So the two spots here are basically two antennas that are in a pair. And so what you do is you correlate pairs of antennas. So this pair of antennas is going to give you those kind of lobes. This is the same thing you would see in the previous slide, except you rotate these 90 degrees. You have one antenna above the other rather than beside the other, and you would get those kind of lobes. Let's just go back to the previous slide, right? You're going to get those kind of lobes here, pointing this way, the radiation pattern lobes. And now I'm just pointing up rather than pointing at the horizon, but it's the same idea. You get these lobes from these two antennas, or it could be one antenna and the image in the ground. But since we're above the ground, we're just going to build the two antennas. There's one and there's the other. So we get these lobes. Well, if you now have another antenna here, which is closer by, you get other lobes. And so I have a pair. I have this pair here, and I have that pair there, and I have this pair here. I got 3 pairs now. And the 3 pairs are different distances apart. And so I get 3 different sets of these lobes, of these what they call fringes. That's what they call them in radio astronomy. And they add up together in this way, and you get this result. But that's not quite good enough because you're getting 3 peaks. Now you add a 4th antenna, and now I got 4 different distances. I got a big, small distance here, and a bigger distance there, and a bigger distance there, and a bigger. So I got 4 different pairs that are different distances apart. They're all going to have their own fringes, and guess what? We get a nice peak out of this here, and that's the way. So this is basically the Fourier transform correlation thing. That's the multiply part. And then the adding together part is here. And the result is you get a nice peak like that. And that's the peak that's going to pick out the signal that you want to see. And so then by adjusting the phases, you can then basically create peaks like this everywhere. And that's how you can create the image, because this is a one-dimensional image that I've shown you here, but it would be a 2-dimensional image. And you would then see all the sources in the sky that way. So that's the short version of interferometry. And so here's some more pictures of interferometry. There's one antenna like that. It radiates in all directions. If you have 2 of them together, you get these sort of interference patterns. That's just another picture of the same idea. And so we use those ideas in my experiment to measure the azimuth and elevation of an incoming test signal. And so this was our experiment. We had a signal coming in at 30-degree azimuth and 60-degree or 70-degree. This was a high angle signal. The transmitter was, transmitter was less than 100 miles away. This is kind of your near vertical incidence for, during the daytime at 7 megahertz. That's what it looked like. And you can see that the elevation changes very slowly, very gradually over the time. This is a time scale of half an hour. And so the height of the ionosphere is shifting gradually with time. So that's kind of a very, very slow wave in the ionosphere. This is what the signal looked like in the all sky image thing. So there you can see our little peak, that's our signal. And this is what it looks like, as a big lobe coming at that high angle. And so that's because there's only one signal, we only see one lobe. We don't see a star field, we don't see all the other stuff, we just see the one signal because that's all there is. The accuracy of the measurements that we do, I developed a new technique, which is new from the standard all sky imaging technique, which gives you much greater accuracy at low angles, which actually isn't that interesting for the radio astronomers. They're mostly interested in stuff above. But certainly for us, looking at low angle signals arriving from contest signals, they're going to be low angles, and my technique gives you a much more accurate picture of those angles. This is reversed, by the way. So that's at the horizon here, and this is straight up and down. Okay, so this is now a picture from Sweepstakes CW 2020. So lots of signals. You can see the signals here, and you can see 4 different signals from 4 different directions coming in here all at the same time. And I have a video of that, which I can play if I can figure out how to share the screen for that.
Excuse me, which way is east?
Which way is east? Okay, the way this picture works, it depends on the time of day. This is, of course, the ecliptic, right? This is where the moon and the sun move across that path. So I don't know what happened there. Okay, where is it now? There we are. So east, I believe, is going to be this way. It's reversed. So east is this way and west is that way. And this doesn't show the sun because the sun doesn't radiate very well at 14 megahertz. So we don't see a picture, we don't see an image from the sun, but we're just seeing the signals that are being transmitted. At this moment, there happens to be 4 of them. There's probably a lot more, but they're too weak to show up in the image. What's fun is to see a live picture of this, so you can see all the signals flashing on and off with the Morse code, and see them coming and going, and they send something, and then other signals come in. It's quite a fun video to see, and I will try to play that later on. I don't want to interrupt the presentation now because it might mess it up. So that's these are the signals that I was wanting to use for the experiment to measure the ionospheric height. Because now I have just the one signal, I have to set up a transmitter. And I get one signal, just like I showed you here, and I get one lousy signal, and I can say, okay, fine, that's my height for the ionosphere, and figure the waves. Here, I get free signals transmitted by you guys and other people, all transmitting, and I can process each one separately and figure out where they are located. Of course, I know from the call sign where you are, and therefore I know the distance that you are. I know the angle of arrival that I should get, depending on the ionospheric height. So if the ionosphere is higher, then the arrival angle will be higher. And so I can watch your angle of arrival, and from that angle of arrival and knowing your distance and your location, I can determine the height of the ionosphere at that point. And if I have thousands of signals, I get thousands of points, and I can get a really nice picture of the height of the ionosphere and see the waves in the ionosphere. Now, this project I haven't finished yet, and so I don't have a video to show that, but that's ongoing, and we're analyzing these signals. So that's the science. That's the science part that I wanted to tell you about, that these contest signals are very useful, and the FT8 ones are good because they carry on for a long time, for 15 seconds at a time, or 7.5. The Morse code, of course, is shorter, but I get enough milliseconds of signal that I can localize them and use them to aggregate all the signals and determine the height of the ionosphere. So thank you guys for all your transmissions. So I now move on to if there's any questions about that part before I move on to the next part. Anything else you want to ask me?
So I imagine that you can see things like when people say the band is going long or something like that, you can start to see the signals coming at different angles or lower angles as the day wears on, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see that. And the VHFers would love to see that at, say, 6 meters when the angles get high. And they know that they've got high angles, which means that maybe 2 meters is opening up for E-skip. So that's another way to look at it. So it gives you this measurement of the angle, the angle of arrival, and you get that in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So, just set up one of those LWA arrays in your backyard, and you've got it.
So conventional wisdom is that, and I have tried this, where I raise my antenna to get the lowest angle at sunrise and sunset, and then the middle of the day I lower the antenna but try to get a higher angle for the East Coast from here. Does your studies shown that is the case, that the angles are low at maybe 2 hops at the beginning of the day and then gets higher in the middle of the day?
Yes, that's definitely what you see. And if you have multiple hops, you'll actually see you might see multiple images of the same signal. And so many times you get multipath on HF, and you'll get maybe 2 hops and 3 hops at the same time, and they're slightly delayed from each other. And so they merge together, and then you get a bit of sort of flutter echo or something on the signal. We see that particularly from Europe coming in, that flutter. But this image would actually separate those 2 components out. You would actually see the separate multipath components coming from different angles. So it's a very nice tool. And I want to explore it more, and in future, if I have some nicer videos, I will be happy to share them with the club. Okay, other questions?
Yeah, Peter, this is Andy, AE6Y. Is this work that is not being done elsewhere or otherwise? Or are you the only person doing this kind of experimentation at the moment?
Well, I'm certainly not the only one using the LWA. I mean, there's lots of radio astronomers using it for various, radio astronomical purposes and some ionospheric study purposes. As far as I know, I'm the only one to have ever used amateur radio signals with this array. And so I have quite a collection of data, and there's a lot more information I can get out of it. I mean, an example was to see how the angles shift with time, to see the multipath.
Mhm.
I would need to get a higher resolution picture than the one that's up there now to really see what's going on. But to my knowledge, I'm the only one who's using the amateur radio signals for this purpose. And but it's great, because what you want is thousands of what we call signals of opportunity, which just illuminate the ionosphere, and then you can find out properties of the ionosphere from all those many signals coming from many different places. And the best thing I can think of is amateur radio signals, because there's more of those than just about anything else during contest time.
Does the ionosphere have internal waves in it? So it goes up and down? I mean, not just on a diurnal scale, but at a more rapid rate?
Yes, it does. And I'm trying to understand that better and quantify that better. So I don't have answers yet, but I'm trying to answer that question using your signals.
Okay, happy to help.
Thanks.
So if you were in a planetarium like room and you had loudspeakers all over the place, could you image this in an audio way and listen to the contest and hear where people's signals are coming from in terms of height as well as aspects?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, usually that's where I was going to end up. Is if you have a planetarium, then that's exactly what we could do. Make a great show. You'd hear the CW. You would do the head-related transfer function stuff, or put speakers out just so that the sounds come from all the right directions. And you could do that with headphones and make the sound appear to come from surround sound. Or you could actually have speakers in the planetarium, and that'd be a great show. And but then also think about the possibilities that the signals are coming from different directions. So you now have an ability to separate signals by space. I mean, right now, with a directional antenna, of course, you're focused on one area and you're reducing the other ones, but it'd be nice to receive everything in parallel. And when we get to the digital contests, we can now start using computers to actually receive everything in parallel from different directions. And that's going to give you an edge in contesting.
Right. So it's the ultimate diversity.
It is. So I'm coming back to that.
This is Chris, N6WM. I was going to suggest that it would be really interesting to merge this with like a CW skimmer technology, so you could actually see exactly real time, and you could overlay it where it would actually show you the call sign as it's coming through. It would be kind of interesting.
Oh, well, I agree, and that's something I would like to do. I've got the data, and all the call signs are there. So it's just a question of finding more graduate students who are hams, who love this kind of stuff and who want to do all the programming. But it's not difficult to do that, and I don't need graduate students. Even undergraduate students are good for that. And I teach. In my undergraduate communications course, I teach amateur radio, and I run exams. In fact, I'm running exams next week, and typically I get 40 students who take the exam. It's an optional exam; they don't have to take it, but they can if they want to. And then we introduce them to this kind of stuff, and hopefully it sticks with a few. So that's part of the fun.
That's awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to this at the end of the talk, but let's do a little switch now and talk about contesting specifically and the design of contest rules. I'm sure we all have operated in contests which have, there's controversy about the rules, and the rules aren't quite right, or the rules are interpreted in different ways, and sometimes the rules are badly written. And of course, the contest rules are the core thing that we need to get right in order to enjoy the contest in the best way. So I got my feet wet in contest rules when I joined the Radio Amateurs of Canada and decided, okay, there is no Canadian contest, so every country seems to have its contest, right? And every region has its contest, the Japan contest, the Europe contest, or whatever. So let's have a Canada Day contest. So I just sort of decreed that because I could do that, and the organization would sponsor it. And so I decreed and gave birth to the Canada Day contest in 1980. And so I want to talk a little bit about how I did that. And David said he wanted to hear more about that and sort of how it evolves. And then the second part, I'll talk about the new digital contests that are coming out from the ARL and CQ. So here is the first running of the Canada contest, and that was the 1980 December QST, and it ran on the 28th of December and sponsored by us, and it's all written out there what the rules were. And basically the idea was to anybody could work anybody, but you get 10 points for working Canadians and you get 1 point for working anybody else. And the multipliers are all the Canadian provinces and territories. And then suggesting phone on the even hours and CW on the odd hours, because you don't know how much activity there's going to be. And some suggested frequencies, so kind of like the QSO parties. And this is like a Canadian QSO party. So we started with that in 1980. My address is even there. They mailed the logs to me where I was living when I was a graduate student at that time. And so then in July, we ran the next version of it. We run it twice a year, the Canada Day contest. And again, the rules are now a little longer, but they basically says the same thing. And I think what it is I sent the same rules to QST, but they decided to publish more of them. So then what happened is I created the contest, and then after a number of years, I turned it over to other people to do all the log checking and keeping it. And I got, I graduated and I had to start working to earn real money, and I didn't have time to manage contests anymore. So other people took it over. But the question here was, how stable are the rules over time? I mean, ARL sweepstakes has got pretty stable rules. And so people love that contest because they know what it is. They know they can look at past records, compare to previous records, new records. It's kind of a stable thing. When the contest changes every year, it's not so good. So I tried to create a set of rules that would be stable in 1980. And so I just summarized the rules here. So all the bands, I included 6 meters and 2 meters just to allow the people in Canada who had the technician type license to also participate. And the CW frequencies were set and the sideband frequencies. And then I said, okay, well, you don't want to make CW contacts in the foam band or foam contacts in the CW bands because that makes a mess of the bands. Let's follow the band plan. And then the exchange that I said was a signal report and a serial number. And then I said the VE1 stations, and there was at that time 3 provinces all were VE1. They had to also send their province. So at this point, this is the first change that happened. So over time, the other people, whoever took over, they dropped the serial number exchange but to be sent by the VE and said they should just send their province. I think that was a bad change because every province now has a unique prefix in Canada, and the Canadian rules say if you move to a different province, you have to change your call sign to have the right prefix, unlike in the US where you can keep your call. No, you got to change it and have the right prefix for the province you're living in. So therefore, the province or territory is redundant information. We already know what it is from the prefix, from the call sign. So why not keep it interesting and send the serial number? Because then I know what my competitors are doing. Right now, I don't know. All the Canadians are just sending provinces, and I don't know how well they're doing. So I think that was a bad change. I think I was right in the beginning. Then the QSO points, I said 10 points for a contact with Canadian, 1 point for contact with others. Maybe that's a bit thin. They changed it down the road to make a contact worth 2 points. And maybe that's okay. So it still gives activity for people to work outside Canada. The other special thing about this contest is it's an everybody work everybody format, which even though you can work, DX all over the world, you don't get any multipliers. The only multipliers are Canadian provinces and territories. But that keeps the activity going. You don't have to say to people, I don't want to work you. It's kind of negative. That way you're calling CQ, somebody calls you, you work them, you get your 2 points, and you carry on. So that survived. The multipliers, well, they changed. That was because they added an extra territory. So that was politics. And so there's now 13 instead of 12. And then the multipliers, of course, the final score is always QSO points times multipliers. So what's interesting here is that over 42 years, the contest rules stayed essentially the same. So I feel good about that because somehow I managed to craft a set of rules that stuck, that met with acceptance in the community, and people are still coming to work in this contest. So that's very satisfying. In some way, the number of people who are influenced by this contest may be much greater than the number of people influenced by the academic papers I write. Kind of interesting. And so the contest did run, and there's Canadian record scores, and so it's still very active. There's single band categories, and number of logs submitted last year was 654, so that's not huge, but not terrible. So it seems to be a going concern. So after 42 years, it survived. So that's creating a contest. So any thoughts or questions on that one? I know that a number of you are active in the contest. The more, the merrier. And I really appreciate it that you're participating. I think N6RO has participated consistently with either multiple calls or with multi operation. And it's always interesting to see what you can achieve. So any comments on this contest from your perspective? I mean, I'm the guy who created it, but I'd love to know what you think of it, and if you think it should be different or the same. Or
Lots of fun. It's lots of fun, this contest.
I
We
like
enjoy it.
Everybody can work everybody concept. That's the most fun of it. And it's mixed mode.
Down here south of the border, we say it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
Yeah, I like the fact that 6 meters is on it, and because we'll just be operating and we'll have some radio sitting there monitoring, and suddenly you hear these 2 VE6s talking to each other, booming in, and you jump on it.
We have yet to work a 2-meter station though.
Yeah, but there was one change this year I noticed, is that they it used to be a single op couldn't use assistance, period. And now they have an assisted category starting this year.
yes, and I noticed that. I wasn't going to comment because it wasn't my thing, but I think the people who took over the contest just kind of didn't like the idea of assisted. And then somebody came along, rather than trying to talk to the contest sponsor and say, look, you should have an assistant category and you can read the 3830 scores comments, and people were making comments like I operated, for 2 hours, but I didn't care about bands change rules and this and that. So I'm now multi. So those kind of comments were made. Nothing happened. But I think what happened, somebody came up with some money and sponsored some plaques. And they sponsored 2 plaques, one for, single op assisted, and one for CW, and one for single op assisted sideband or something, and all band. So those the new categories were sort of created by force majeure because somebody put money on the table and said, here's a plaque and here's a trophy, let's make this category. And so it happened. There's a lesson.
Did you have to make any modifications due to kind of sort of the things that are going on in the Maritimes there? We were, having dabbled in a number of contest management stuff here in the US, there was a pretty heavy push to try and, break out all the provinces in the Maritime region. And I think it even got to the point where the RAC actually gave them their own sections, it's like some very small sections. But did you have to modify the contest to accommodate that at all?
Well, only in the sense that I always counted the provinces. And so you see in the left column, there was 12, and in the right column, there was 13. So that was only because they created a third territory in the far north. But I didn't have to modify the contest at all. It was always provinces. So in the beginning, the VE1s, which is the Maritime section, was 3 provinces. And so they had to send their province in order to get the multipliers right. You see that in red. So I anticipated that. I said, look, every province should be its own multiplier, and I did that. But the calls were all VE1s for New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island, and so they had to send their province. But now they don't have to anymore because the prefixes are all there.
Yeah, I think, Chris, they're really mad at us in California because in CQP they're all lumped together since we only have 8 Canadian multipliers. To try to so that we'll end up with 58 multipliers. So we're the ones who really don't do justice to those provinces. VE9AA is always complaining about it, I know.
Yeah, we've had our
Yeah.
nose bloodied by them a number of times.
Right.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is after 42 years, leave it alone, don't change it.
It's
My,
awesome.
you know, my request is usually that there should be a separate set of awards for out of Canada versus in Canada.
Well, that means a plaque and a sponsor.
Yeah, I know it comes down to that.
And
I
so,
seem to recall the only complaint I have about the Canada Day contest is it seems to happen while I'm at work. I think it usually happens during the week sometime or something like that.
well,
And
that is,
we don't get Canada Day off here, unfortunately.
no, that's too bad, I guess. Yeah.
But
Well,
I'd be glad to get Canada Day off, but
yeah, right. Well, I mean, when I created it, I thought, okay, we should celebrate Canada Day and kind of let the world know that this is Canada Day, whatever day of the week it is, just as a kind of advertising Canada Day, and that, you know, we have a day in which our country was created, which not all countries have, right? But I have the second version, the second one, the Canada Winter Contest, they call it now, the original Canada contest, that runs on whichever weekend in late December is not Christmas or New Year's.
I love that contest. That's my favorite.
And
Yeah.
so that's always a weekend.
Yeah.
And it'll either fall between Christmas and New Year, if depending on how the calendar is that particular year.
Yeah.
So
Winter is the best for us low benders.
well, yeah, exactly. That would be good. And summer is the best for the people who want to work 6-meter E-skip.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at the last year's results. I think there was a big sporadic E opening during the contest, and there was one guy worked 10 multipliers on 6. So that was impressive.
Did you also write the adjudication software for the contest, or did you
The
source that
software,
out?
the adjudication software did not exist in 1980. Right, it was that was a manual log check thing. And so after 2 or 3 rounds of that, I graduated and I had to get to work, and I said, I don't have time for this anymore. And then I lost track of how they did the log checking. That's what are we doing in 1980? What did we have? We had did we even have PCs then?
Not quite.
No computers in 80.
No. So not much log checking.
No PCs anyway.
No.
Yeah.
So that's the contest. So that was the creation of that one. So I feel really good about having created a set of rules that stuck it out for 42 years.
I had a VIC 20, so there were computers.
Yeah, well, good luck trying to manually type in all the logs into VIC 20 and then have it crunch it.
Yeah, that
forget
would
it.
have been painful. Yeah.
So anyway, shall we move on to the next one, the digital contest? So that's now, and so we got these 2 contests from ARRL and CQ that have just come out, and the exchange is only the grid square. And so there's no serial number, there's no signal to noise ratio, no RST, just the grid square. And that turns out to be very significant in the way the contest can be operated and the kind of rates you can achieve. And so the ARRL digi says in single operator, you can do 1 radio and single operator 2 radios, somehow they're separating them. But 1 person can perform all the operating and logging functions. Okay, fine. CQ spells it out a bit more clearly. 1 person, the operator, performs all the operating and logging functions, but transmissions may only be on 1 band at a time, and no limit on band changes. So I can have 6 radios all running at the same time and just pick the band depending on how I want 1 QSO at a time. So that's good. The implications of these rules are coming up, and under these rules, you can do 960 Qs per hour in FT4. And I'll show you how
But you
get
need
that.
960 participants.
Well, that's it. So you work them all in an hour, and then you can go back to sleep. I mean, but we're hoping there'll be enough participants. Okay, so this is the part 3. So what are the contests, the maximum rates you can get, and what are the strategies you can deploy? But you got to first ask, what's a valid QSO? And until we decide what a valid QSO is, we don't know what the maximum rate can be. So let's figure that out. So this was a research project. And so as I was getting into preparing this talk, I thought, okay, now what is the maximum rate we can get? Because we're kind of stuck with people thinking you can do 60 Qs per hour, 1 Q per minute. Every 4 cycles of 15 seconds is 60 an hour. And that's, a pretty slow rate. And people kind of get bored and say, I don't want to play in digital contests. This is not what I want to do. I'll come back to that. So some relevant contest literature. I looked over, W0YK has written quite a few things. Ed, of course, K1JT wrote about FT8, having invented it. N6MJ, 2BSIQ. That's interesting. And so these are some things I had to look at. All good professors read the literature before they say anything, right? Okay, so digital contests can be slow and boring for many. So to make them exciting and fun, we need high rates, and we need a new kind of operating challenge that's different from CW, sideband, or RTTY. So every type of mode has its own flavor, has its own charm to it, and we all choose what we like best, or we do a bit of everything. But they're all distinctly different, and that's what makes it interesting to do the different modes, and they're different kinds of contests and different strategies, and that's the fun of it all. So in what follows, I'm going to show you how to achieve these kind of crazy rates. And before I can get there, what's a valid QSO? So both QSO partners need to know that the other party has received their call sign and their exchange. Do we all agree with that? That's a QSO. And so a typical sideband or CW QSO is 4 cycles, or QSO moments, as CP1BOH calls it. And so this is an example of a standard CW SSB QSO. I'm just putting this out, not that you don't know this stuff, we all know this stuff, but it just as a reference to compare what we're going to do with the digital QSO. So there's the 4 phases in red on the left. So there's the CQ part, or ending the QSO and moving on to the next. You get the call, and you send the exchange, you then get the exchange, and you then end the QSO and wait for the next pileup. So as you can see, after you send CQ, you get a call out of the pileup. And so having received that call sign, you know that guy W6AA has got your call sign because he called you. So you know that. So that takes care of one part of the QSO requirements. Then once you send W6AA 5903, then W6AA knows that I got, he's been received by the run station. So he knows he's in, he's there. And then get the exchange. Well, now W6AA sends his exchange. And so now the running station knows that W6AA has received my exchange. And then the last part is when you send TU, then W6AA knows that the run station has got my exchange, and he's now satisfied, and you can put it in the log. So the 4 green bits have to be satisfied in order to make a QSO. And let me know if there's anything wrong here, but that's what I see. That's a valid QSO. All right. So the standard FT8 QSO looks a little bit different. Well, it looks kind of similar. So you get a CQ call, you get a pileup, and you get you get a pileup, and you pick one call out of it. One guy is calling, and a bunch of other guys are calling. So now KH1, the DX station, knows that K1B ABC received his call. It could be called him. And then so these 4 here look like the same thing as the single sideband CW QSO, the same thing. This is the TU message, right? RR73 is like saying thank you, on to the next. So that's effectively a CQ, saying it's CQ, I'm done, I'm ready for the next pileup. But then some of the recommendations say he has to then send K1ABC, send 73. That's redundant. We don't need that. The QSO has already been done. We don't need this redundant 73. And then if If the DX is waiting for that 7.3, he's now got a 6-cycle QSO, because now he's going to send his CQ here. But he doesn't need this 7.3. This is redundant. We don't need that one. So I say, well, if you don't need it, let's get rid of it. So here's the fixed messages, which also kind of encourage 6 cycles per QSO, right? People just follow the software. So with those initial observations about CW versus FT8, here are some general comments. So what are the differences between digital QSOs and CW QSOs? Well, the pileup callers are spread out throughout the 3 kilohertz band. And so many callers can be decoded in one cycle. So the pileup is calling you, you don't get one or, if you're really good, you can get 2 or 3 call signs out of the pileup, but in digital, you can get 100. So the run station can receive 2 or more stations at once in one cycle. So that's different from CW. The S&P who's calling in the pileup can send both his call and his exchange in the pileup. That's different, right? The normal pileups on CW, you just send a call, keep sending your call forever until you're heard. But here you would send both the call and the exchange. And the run station can receive both the call and the exchange in one cycle. And the run station can transmit to 2 stations at once in one cycle also. You can send to 2 call signs. So thus, digital QSOs may be quite different from the standard SSB CW QSO, the CQ and the get call and the send exchange and the get exchange. We can actually have valid QSOs in only 2 cycles. And that doubles your rate. So here's the sort of thing that some people call a short QSO, which reduces it from 6 to 4 cycles. And so what happens there is there's a tail ender in here. So it's the same one we saw before. There's a CQ, there's the pileup, there's the response. But a tail ender, other people can send there, right? So while the guy is responding, in SSB CW will be considered rude to transmit over top of him, right? Because you want to give the running station a chance to get the exchange. But in FT8, you can transmit because you know you're not going to interfere, because the run station will be able to decode that guy as well as you. That's the difference. And then we have this one. You see, he can send his RR73 here. Right? And
I would
I think
volunteer.
I wrote this wrong. I see there's a bug here. Tail ender may not transmit here. The tail ender is going to transmit here, one line down. That's where he's going to transmit. So while that guy is saying, I got the call or I got the exchange, there can be a tail ender. Because of course, the DX is transmitting in slot 3. So the tail ender is in slot 4. So sorry about that bug.
I would say one other fundamental difference is the time sequence between phone and CW and FT8 and FT4. FT8 and FT4 have strict time sequencing, where the other 2 modes do not. So
Well,
the strategy is different. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a fundamental difference. Yeah,
that's a fundamental difference that I could add to that. You're right. And that shows up later when I talk about 2BSIQ. So here is the ARL RTTY roundup. At one time had both RTTY and FT8 in it at the same time. So this is an example of where an attempt was made to make new rules that actually kind of flopped a bit, I think. And so now they've separated out. The RTT roundup is only RTTY and FT8 is a separate contest. But anyway, so that happened for a while, and K1JT wrote a QSC article saying, you can do contesting in FT8 because FT8 was relatively new then and was the first kind of attempt at doing contesting in FT8, the first experiment with contesting. And so these are the kind of things that they were suggesting could be done. So CQ roundup, you get a response, and but notice the response includes the exchange. So the report and the state is sent in the pileup. Then you respond, the run station responds with their exchange, and then the S&P-er says, yes, he got the exchange, confirming that he received the exchange. So that's the end of the QSO. Now here's where the tail ender can come in, you see. So the run station can get both the acknowledgement from the station he just worked and get a new station in the same time slot. Can't do that in CW. So that's what happens. And then the suggestions in K1JT's article, and he's a smarter guy than I am, but I don't agree with what he said here. So there is this redundant 7.3 that was in their suggestions. We don't need to send that 7.3. The QSO requirements have already been met. And there they are, 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't need that 7.3. Instead, what you can do is, and we don't need that, just call CQ. You know, don't send another 7.3, just send CQ, get your next QSO.
Or call the tail ender.
Yeah, or just call the tail ender, exactly, that's even better. So that's where we're going. So here's the modified exchange, 2 cycles per QSO. So you eliminate the redundant 7.3 and you work the tail ender instead. Oops, what happened there? So here it is. You receive both the caller and 3 cycles. Okay, so here it is. So you call CQ, you get your answer with the exchange. You then answer with your exchange, and then you get these 2 things happening at once. So the other guy, the S&Pers told you he got your exchange, so that's good. Now you can log him. And the tail ender is calling you at the same time. And so you know you got a new guy to work. And you got his exchange too. So now you send him his exchange. And so now the responder knows that you got his call and his exchange, so he's done. He's going to say, thank you. And so now I know that he got your exchange. So you're done with that QSO. And you got another tail ender. And the cycle continues. And so what's happening here is the QSO is spread out over 3 cycles, you see. So this cycle here and this cycle and this cycle. But it only takes 2 cycles to, on average, to complete the QSO. So this is you now doubled your rate. Now I stared at this and thought, is there something wrong here? Have I made a mistake? Well, I'll put it out to the contest club and they'll tell me if I made a mistake, but I don't think so.
Looks good. The only thing is, what if he doesn't get your exchange?
Well, then he's going to send it again, right? And he's going to, if he doesn't get your exchange, now which one are you thinking of now? So there's of course the exception cases where things don't work, right?
Instead of the 73 says send it again.
Okay, so he doesn't get it. So then he's going to say, probably he's just going to send his exchange again. He's going to send this again, right? So if I was GM1 AAA and I didn't get that, I would send that again. I would just send my exchange again.
And then do you come back with a 73 or do you call the next station? If you call the next station, you don't know that you're in the log.
That's right. So now you have to give up a cycle to make sure you're in his log, even though you got another station you could have called. So that's part of the problem with FT8 contests is there's a lot of nil, right? There's 5% nils has been reported. And that's probably the nils there because people want that 5 and 6 cycle. They want that extra 7-3. But here's a case where you're running 2 cycles per QSO, but once in a while you have to give up a cycle if somebody didn't get your exchange. Fair enough. You know, if he didn't get your exchange, then you need to send it again. But it's interesting to look at this picture, how you're sort of spread over 3 cycles, but the QSO is kind of overlapping because one cycle here has got two different QSOs happening at the same time, the end of one and the beginning of the next. And this is all, you know, in the software now. There's no change to the software required to do this. So now we go to ARL-Digi, and so they wrote their suggestions. So after K1JT wrote his QST article, now there's the rules, and you read the ARL-Digi rules, and this is what it says. CQ test, there's the response, and this is the one that you've only got the grid split. So there's, in the previous one, we actually have a real exchange that's going to change. The signal report may be different from one station to the next. But here we just got the grid split. So it's a fixed exchange, which we know what it is. So he sends CQ test, there it is with the exchange. The guy responds with his exchange. And then the suggestion said, well, you send it again. You say, oh, yeah, I got your exchange, and here's my grid again, a second time. Don't need that. And then it says, he's going to send 7.3, says, okay, I got your exchange, but I already got it before, so why does he have to say it again? And a tail ender may send here too. And then the suggestion says, send another 7.3. So now, then you get another tail ender here maybe, and finally you get to call CQ again, unless there's a tail ender there. So now you've taken up 6 cycles for the QSO. This is not helping your rate. So one alternative I'm suggesting is this one. Get rid of the redundant 7.3, just say that. You're still sending your exchange twice. But as soon as you get that guy's acknowledgement, send your thank you message is just CQ test. Keep going. No TU needed. You don't even need to say thank you because the exchange was sent in cycle 2. You sent your exchange here. He got it. So I don't have to say thank you again. I just send CQ. So that gets it down, that cuts it down from 6 to 4. So that's progress. But it's not helpful that this is what's published in the magazine. Everyone's looking at this when they're setting up and planning to operate the contest. So that's what I want to talk to the club about, is how do we organize this in a way that's going to work? So here is the fixed exchange. So the exchange is at the grid square, no variable, no SNR QSO number. And the running station sends the exchange twice, so we don't want to do that. So instead what we're going to do is do this. See, this is what he's doing. So he's sending it there. The fixed exchange, this is kind of the same thing again. He sends it again, and this is the redundant one. So this is not helping. So let's look at this. This is much better. So he calls CQ. There's the pileup. He gets an exchange. He gets a call sign and an exchange. So he's got a call sign and an exchange ready for the log. Then he sends his grid square again. That is okay. And it sends Roger, and he can send a CQ because he's now got the SSP responder, having heard this transmission, knows that the run station has got his call and his exchange. So this is the acknowledgement of the call sign and the exchange both. So we're done with the QSO. And we can just have another pileup. So
You need a new pro sign for RRRCQ. The message is too long, isn't it? With full-size call signs?
I think it's, I haven't done the numbers to see that, but if it is, we don't need the CQ, we just send R and be done with it.
Well,
That's
or
what-
just come up with some new ASCII character, a single character that means RRRCQ, and just everybody knows it.
Exactly. I mean, but I specifically said RRCQ to make it really clear what I mean to say. But if I just send even just a single R, then the pileup can call because it knows, it's watching what's happening, and it knows, okay, I can call. And if I'm in the if I'm in the lineup to work this DX station, I'm going to be sending in every time slot, right? So they're going to keep on repeating, sending their call sign in every time slot, hoping to get through.
Well,
There's going to be a pileup there.
You could just send R CQ, in your call.
Exactly.
You don't need
That's
to
right.
send his call and exchange again.
You don't even need to do that. Well, no, remember, no. I'm not sending it again. This is the first one here, right?
No, I'm talking about the CQer.
Yeah, the CQer.
So he sends the other guy's call once, K1ABC. I'm working.
Right.
Oh, so he has to say K1ABC R CQ and he's done.
You're right. But it's nice to send his call in every transmission just so you know who it is.
Yeah.
For newcomers to the frequency. But the point is that your QSO is done in 2 cycles. Not 4, not 6.
Right.
So now you can do call stacking. This is a comparison to the foxhound mode. This is not the contest mode, but the de-expedition mode. And so that achieves 2 cycles per QSO. So I could have maybe put the slide first. So the 2 cycles per QSO is already existing. It's not a new thing. It already exists for de-expeditions. So there's no reason why we can't have it for contests. And in this case here, this looks kind of like the first example I showed you with the variable exchange. The same idea where you've got 2 things happening in one time slot, the end of one QSO and the beginning of the other. And you can see here how that works. So this is the comparison. This is the one slide we can take a close look at. So here's where I started with the roundup with the variable exchange. And so we went through that example where you got those 2 things happening at the same time, right? The tail ender is in there, and and you're saying, acknowledging the previous guy who just worked. So that's 3 time slots or 3 cycles, but on average only 2 cycles per QSO, but each QSO is spread out over 3 cycles. It looks very much like the de-expedition mode, where again, there can be call stacking, but even if there isn't call stacking, you can get the same pattern of behavior. You see, you get the call sign call, there's the answer. The colors match up, you see. And so there's no reason why we can't run a contest like this, since the de-expedition mode also runs in 2 cycles. And then if you happen to have a fixed exchange contest where it's not variable, it changes slightly, and you don't have that overlapping function of 2 parts of the QSO, or 2 different QSOs happening in the same time slot. Here it's all clearly separated, but the rate doesn't go up. So I thought this was useful, and I'm interested in your comments that we can have 2 cycles per QSO, we can get decent rates, but the world out there is reading the rules and the suggested format and is thinking about 6 cycles per QSO. So how do we get there? How do we get to here? Because the contest will be much more fun if we run it this way than if we run it with 6 cycles per QSO.
Very hard to get contest rules changed.
No, but the rules, what I've written
Not the rules,
here,
I mean the suggested
You only
stuff.
have to change the write-up, not the rules.
And then you have to get everybody to read the write-up and reprogram. Yeah. There's some examples of how to program your software to do all this would put people on their way.
I think WSJT would have to change as well, because I think it's going to repeat the 73 if it hears another RR. It needs to be abbreviated.
Yeah. Anyway, if you
I think
figured
that's
out,
the answer.
if you figured out how to make the software do this, then tell everybody else how to do it. Just give them a cookbook on what to program in those 6 slots in WSJT. Make it work.
Zach. Yep. Agreed.
I think
So
the
what's
sorry,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the nils are partly also because you either get something or you don't. It's completely binary here. Whereas even in RIDI, which is ostensibly digital, you get each character is you either get or you don't, or you get something, a little garbled, and you can make a judgment call. You can use your imagination and convince yourself you have a valid contact. Whereas here, if it just doesn't show up, it doesn't show up.
Yeah, so it's very reliable. And if somebody doesn't get something, they're going to send their exchange again. And then you have to decide, am I going to send my exchange again and give up a cycle to clinch that QSO? But that's all. So it's pretty minor changes to the software. It's just stopping it from sending these redundant messages. But how do we get there? Do I publish this in National Contest Journal or in QST, or do I write to K1JT, or how do we get there?
I would do both. I would definitely write K1JT for sure. I'm
Yeah,
sure that he would.
Get W0YK to view this video.
Well, whoever runs the contest has to change the write-up and make a big announcement that we'd like everybody to try this new method to speed things up.
I actually think that the software needs to be changed. That's why I suggested K1JT. I think that
Yeah.
the way it crams those exchanges through is not very flexible, and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, and I think it's straightforward to do because he's already got it, right? He's already done the expedition mode. So he already understands about 2 cycles per QSL. So this is not a conceptual argument. This is just a programming change.
It's an interesting, it's almost an anti-argument too, because, you know, one of the biggest complaints with the WSJT is that people can't have regular QSOs in the mode, right? Here we are talking about, let's nail it down to 2 cycles, right? It's the opposite of what a lot of complaints are.
And right now it does everything wrong.
Well, there's other modes, right? There's sort of there's various versions of this that have a sort of limited conversational mode. So that's out there.
I don't know. Is it possible for everybody to run Foxhound mode? I don't know enough about it.
Well, it isn't. He's discouraging that, and I think the reason is because it's specifically set up for one transmitter at the low end of the band and all the callers on the high end of the band. And so you see these, and you put on a different FTA channel, not the standard one. And then you see these waterfalls, right, with one little thin line on the right, on the left, and then you see the pileup on the right. And I'm sure we've all seen that pattern and say, there's an expedition there, I got to see who that is. So he's really focused on that. So let's leave that one alone. But borrowing the 2 cycles per QSO idea, just make another mode. There's already a mode in the software that says contest mode. So we just have to edit the contest mode to look like what I've got here. But
super contest mode.
But the question is how to approach this. I mean, I can do it. I'm going to come out of the blue sky and say, who is this guy and what's he trying to do? I mean, maybe the club wants to, participate or support or something, this, or has connections to the contest organizers to make this sort of happen smoothly. I don't want to just be a cry in the wilderness and be ignored.
Well, W0YK certainly is involved.
Yeah, and yeah,
He's the most respected guru here, and if you can get him on your case, the contest sponsors may well listen. He's a member of our club. He just didn't make it tonight.
Okay, that's too bad. It would have been fun to have him here and see what he thought. And he's certainly read his articles, and he's written a lot of good stuff and presented a lot of good stuff. So yeah, that's. But if somehow it's the guy.
I assume this is being recorded, so Ed could see it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
He'll get that suggestion.
He'll be happy to talk it over with you on the phone too, instead of watching the whole video.
Sure. Okay, so anyway, I'm happy that nobody's found a mistake in this, so this is actually going to work. So that's good. So let's keep going. Now let's do call stacking. Now we can get it down to 1 cycle per QSO because you don't need to send a different exchange to each calling station. You can work 2 guides in a single transmission. There's enough room in the message that you can send 2 call signs. See the second column. So if you got enough callers, you could actually stick 2 call signs in the message. And I'm going to go back to this one. See, there's 2 call signs in the message for the expedition mode. We've already got that. So there can be 2 call signs in the expedition mode. Why can't we have 2 call signs in the contest mode? And now you've doubled it again.
Yeah, I think one criticism of this might be that the contest, the expedition mode splits the signal into multiple phase modified sine waves, and that can cause distortion.
So we're not going to do that. But David, we're not doing that. We're just going to. This is just one transmitted signal following single op rules, right? We're not doing the expedition. The expedition mode goes one step further and makes 5 transmitted signals, and so you can answer 10 guys at once. And that's great for, de-expeditions. But with the contest rules, right, single op is one signal per band, or one signal at a time, which means one signal, not a group of 5 signals.
Mhm.
So if we stick with the one signal rule, then we can still do 2 QSOs per cycle. Because we can do it there's enough room, because the expedition mode proves that. It can be programmed that way, it's been done, so I'm not creating something new, I'm just building on what's already there.
Yeah.
So now you're 1 cycle per QSO. So the summary is 2 cycles per Q in red, so that's 120 per hour, and FT4 is 240 per hour. So now it's getting interesting. If you get it down to the 1 cycle per QSO with the 2 call signs working 2 guys at a time, then you can get up to 480 an hour. And this is starting to look like the highest rates we've ever seen. And I haven't even done this yet. Right? This is CP1 BOH and 2-band SIQ. And interleaved QSOs. Well, it's synchronized, right? I mean, FT4 and FT8 are perfect for this because the synchronization is built in.
Mhm.
I haven't seen this written anywhere. But this is the most obvious thing to be doing with the digital context. If you're set up with the right radio setup to do this, then why not do it? So here's a chart from maximum rate achieved from CQ, 487 for single sideband, 416 CW, multi-single, single op, 407, 450. So pretty high rates. And so now I've got the FT4 rate in the same ballpark, which makes it really interesting. And so now here is the Foxhound mode. Okay, so this is the de-expedition mode with the 2-bit SIQ. And you can get, it looks like that, just 2 columns the same, just offset by 1 cycle. This is the more interesting one. This is the variable exchange one. Again, 1 cycle per QSO. But you're using 3 time slots for 1 QSO. And you're using time slots for 2 QSOs at a time. That's with the variable exchange. With the fixed exchange, we can do this. And so now we're down to 1 cycle per QSO. I was lazy, I didn't type in different call signs in the second column. But now we can go to the next move with the call stack, and when I'm working 2 guys per cycle, now I got 1 cycle, I got 2 QSOs per cycle. So, and that's guaranteed because it's all synchronized. If you got the, full duplex radio set up, you can do this. 960 per hour. Minor software changes. But there has to be an understanding in the community about this.
Casual guys have to understand this or learn it.
Well, it's much easier than 2B SIQ and CW.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, let's see, what did I write? So the, in CW SSB, the operator is fully occupied with copying by ear, right? Get call or get exchange on each time slot. You're sitting there trying to get a call and exchange every time slot. And the time slots are fast, right? They're not 15 seconds, they're like 3 seconds or less. So this is a tough job. I mean, I know how to do it in theory, but I don't pretend to be able to do it. I'd love to try. I think there's trainers that allow me to do that. There's some software that trains you to do this. So I'm going to, in my copious free time I don't have, I'm going to try it.
Of course, at 160 Qs per hour, there's no operator who can tell what's really happening. And he can't push the enter key or the mouse button fast enough. So you're forced to automate it against over Joe Taylor's dead body. And
Well,
all of a sudden it's computer competition with no human involved.
Right. So that's the question I wanted to talk about. And that's right. As I say, and the second line says, okay, so you get the call and getting the exchange is presented on the screen every 7.5 seconds for FT4. So you have 7.5 seconds to stare at the screen, and then a whole bunch of call signs are going to come up, and you have to click on 2 of them. That's doable. Every 7.5 seconds, you click on 2 of them. That sounds easier to me than trying to copy a pileup every 3 seconds. I think this is doable. The contest rules, of course, require the operators to initiate contact by clicking on the call. So if we stick with that rule, we can then set the software to display only the calls for me read and maybe a few notes when running. And the get call cycle has many calls, so you need to click on one of them, like an RTTY, right? In RTTY, you may have more than one call that shows up. You got to click on one to work one guy. There may be many calls where the RTTY there's only 1 or 2. Now, of course, you can automate which station is selected by algorithm, as is done in the expedition mode, right? It chooses the weakest signals or chooses whatever signals by algorithm. So that's now automation. So we can do that, but we don't have to do that. I think it's something for us to talk about. Can we do this? Every 7.5 seconds, click on at least 1 call, then you're at 480 an hour. If you can click on 2 calls, if there's enough in the stack, then you can get 960 an hour. Is that doable?
It's doable, but the problem is that since only 640 people submitted logs, your contest is over within 45 minutes.
Well, then we'll just relabel it the sprint contest.
Yeah.
Right. Sprint contests are good things for people with limited time.
Yeah. The problem I have with the 7 seconds is you don't really have 7 seconds. You have about a half a second, because the other 6.5 seconds you're waiting around for the thing to decode. So, you know what I'm saying? And then you have to make the decision, yeah, because it needs to go into the next cycle and start doing its thing. You can't think about it for 7 seconds or whatever.
Well, that's true. I didn't say that right. And you've got what is it typically about 2 seconds, I think, looking at the way it works. So the transmission doesn't take up the full 7.5 seconds. It takes up a bit less than that. So there's a gap in there, right? You can see that on the waterfall when you're looking at FT8 and FT4. So I think, would you say it's 2 seconds? I think it's 2 seconds, somewhere around.
Yeah, I just estimating, but yeah. Hey, Peter, oh, go ahead.
FT8 transmits 12.6 seconds.
Right. So you got 2.4 seconds gap.
I was thinking of FT4, it's short, even shorter.
FT4 is going to be probably half that.
Yeah.
Is there any reason technically why he has to wait till the end of the 12 seconds or 4 seconds or whatever before showing you any calls? It seems like confirmed calls could show up sooner, give you a little more time.
I think so, because I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, is that often I end up replying late to somebody for exactly the reason we're talking about. I'm just too slow on the mouse. And so my transmission starts 3 seconds late. And the guy still gets me.
Yes, Bob, the version that came out maybe 6 months ago or 9 months ago, it has an early decode for the strong signals. And then at the last second, you get the really, really deep ones. That's why you see the -20 something at the bottom of the decode. You see some late ones. So you have an extra maybe second or two to decide on the top of the list.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Hey, Peter.
Helpful.
Hey, Peter, I don't want to rush you, but maybe we could, move to the conclusion pretty soon, because I think we've been going on for a while.
Yeah, well, I'm just about there.
Okay.
So this is operator task 2. So the operator click on the call needed once per queue to meet the contest rules. And we just talked about that. So what do you do in the remaining time when you're waiting for the decodes? Well, maybe you're just resting. But we can stretch this further and do multiband SIQ, right? And once you set up the 2B SIQ system, you can have other bands. And so the operator sees multiple calls on each band. Some calls are calling the operator, others are needed multipliers. The operator can choose which calls to click. You can stay on the run bands or you can jump to the mult bands. Losing a cycle on the run band to get a mult on another band will probably not reduce your stacked callers too much. And you've got some time between clicks to look at the data and make strategic decisions, which includes, your own station decodes plus graphics that shows where all the signals are coming from and maybe some historical data. Internet spots may not be so useful because you're getting all the decoding from your own station. And this is where I end up with separating the overlapping signals because you can separate them from different directions, right? So that was kind of closing the loop here. Then you're getting more and more call signs, more challenge. Station automation is needed, not automatic operator, but you want to be able to switch the antennas when you depend on which call sign is clicked. Because some of the call signs might be in a different window, which is an antenna pointed in a different direction. So you've got to be able to switch the antennas depending on the call sign you click. I won't go through this here. This is automated QSOs. I played with an automated QSO program just to see what it would be like. And it makes mistakes. And it, so there's some thinking that needs to be done. The first one here, he calls the first guy and he finally works the first guy. That sends all these RRRs, which we don't need to do. And by the time we got around to calling the second guy's gone. So that was not good. And similarly here, I got two callers, and instead of calling the DX, the mult, I called the first guy. So that was me playing around with automated QSOs, deciding I don't want to do that. And if you want to do automated operation, then you run against this basic problem of discovering better actions by machine learning or taking actions that lead to high rewards in the past. So I won't belabor that. The summary says, digital contests can have high rates and provide operator challenge. The contest rules need to be designed in the software to encourage and facilitate fun and excitement. And the university research can benefit both from tapping into existing activity and providing new tools. So that's my story.
Can I ask you to go back one slide? I wanted to read that last bullet there and that AI thing. How to balance exploration and exploitation. Okay, thank you. So where's the movie? I wanted to see the movie of Blinking Button.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if I can find the movie. So I'll stop sharing this screen then. Stop share, and I'll start the movie. I'll get rid of the movie. There we go. I'll get rid of the PowerPoint. Okay. So now, don't know if you can see anything right now, but I'll try to find the movie. That's the Zoom call. That's the Zoom call. Okay, so I got to find the file. Here's the data file. Okay, here we go. So I got the movie. And now I have to do share the screen. Okay, so now I'm going to share the screen. How do I share the screen now? Zoom.
Hit share screen and then select the right window.
Yeah, so here we go. Okay, share screen. It's the problem is the video is taking up the whole screen and doesn't want to go away. Okay, let's try this. And maybe that will work. Zoom, share screen. I'm having trouble here, guys. I'm sorry. It doesn't seem to want to. I don't see the Zoom window at all anymore now. I can't even see anything window that tells me to share a screen.
Oh, we hear you. Okay.
Make sure nothing's on full
I have no
screen.
window here. This is frustrating. You want to see the video.
Yeah, if you hit Control Shift Escape, it'll bring up your taskbar and show you everything that's running.
Control Shift.
Well, actually, it brings up the task manager. Sorry, but just Control Escape should bring up your help window. Control Escape, not Shift. It should bring up your start menu and you could get back to Zoom.
If you're on Windows, right?
Yeah. Okay, when I click the Zoom, let's click the Zoom. Here we go. Zoom comes up. Well, there's the Zoom window.
And then at the bottom, there's that green share screen button, and you can share screen with anything that's active.
I've got a little tiny window with one person talking. That's all I see right now. And that's you, Bob. I see you, and I only see you, and nobody else.
Oh, that's the way I want it to be when I'm contesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's see, if you right click on the Zoom icon in the taskbar, you could maybe select Zoom that way, or get a expand, or you can drag the edge of the window bigger or something.
Now it wants me to join another meeting. So
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't want to do that. No. All right. It's
So you're having trouble getting the Zoom window big enough now? It might
yeah,
just,
I'm getting just to get the Zoom window.
you double click on the title bar, it should make it full screen.
Well, I'm doing that. And it's not working.
Oh,
It's not working. It's not working at all. Sorry, guys. This is really embarrassing. This is all on tape for the whole world to hear.
yeah, stop the recording. Do you see the little view icon in the upper right corner of the screen? You can say exit full screen or select full screen of the Zoom window.
So the Zoom window is only
yeah, if you put your mouse over it, you should see a little view.
Exit, okay, I found it. The thing was exit minimized window. That's
there you go.
That's what I had to do. Now I'm back in business. Okay, so now we're going to try to run this video again, and then I'll play the video. Okay, now we're getting close. Okay, so here we are. File, open file. There's the file running. And now I'm going to share the screen. So I'm getting here. Share screen. There's the window. Share.
Something's happening.
Okay.
Yes.
So there we go.
We see the movie.
So this is the movie. So I'm doing the movie kind of, that's the Earth rotating. And so
wow.
You can see the various objects moving, and that's at 38 megahertz. And that was, I was not experimenting. That was just sitting in monitor mode.
Oh, this is 38 megahertz. Well, that's not the contest. Right. We wanted to see
no,
the
dots. It's coming. It's coming. Okay. There we go.
Oh,
here's the contest. Here's the contest.
20 meters. And now east is on the left again here. So you're.
Yeah, it's reversed. Yeah.
So those big blobs on the right are like West Coast CQers from New Mexico?
No, they're you guys. Single hop, New Mexico to California.
Okay, we're not quite due west, but I guess it looks kind of northwest. Depends on the opening, 20 meters. Let's see, 17 Zulu on 20. Those are probably Canadians up in the upper right corner. Is that sort of north at the top here on this, or?
Yeah, north at the top, yeah.
Okay, so those blinking things at the upper right corner are Northwestern stations CQing that you're hearing on 20 meters.
Yeah.
Boy, it'd be fun to put headphones on that LWA during a contest.
Yeah.
I don't know, how much gain does it have, though? It's sort of omnidirectional, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But of course, you got to, but remember, you have all the gain of all the antennas in all directions at the same time.
And this is listening. Right? And how wide is that passband that we're listening to? It looks like we're seeing about 20, 30 kilohertz of signals or something.
Yeah, that's right. It's about 70 kilohertz.
70 kilohertz. Okay.
Yeah, so that's
200 SIQ.
It'd be really nice to label those dots with call signs. That'd be fun.
Yeah. So that's...
you got an East Coaster there on the left. They showed up. This is a very fun movie. Boy, imagine if you could put three-dimensional like headphones on this, and you'd hear the East Coast in one ear and the West Coast in the other ear, and you could tell, where signals were. A long path would be behind you. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've seen demos with just headphones on where it sounds like people are walking around your head.
Right.
And I'd love to see a directional antenna array where where you hear the person. If you're facing north, you could hear Europe in the right ear and JA in the left ear, and stuff like that would be fun.
Oh yeah, it's all doable. And but remember that this array, the 256 element array, is making beams simultaneously in all directions and resolving these signals. So
Is there any audio with this, or I guess you just hear the whole band at once? But
you would, yeah. So there's no meaningful audio really.
But you
But I
could
make it.
but you could click on a dot and then it filters around that frequency or something.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
So this was during sweepstakes 2 years ago. Okay. And I have to check the logs. Oh, it's already up to 20. Oh, I see this. We're counting up minutes here. This isn't real time. So
yeah, it's running faster than real time.
Right. That's a very, very cool thing. Hard to publish this video in a magazine, but it's something I've never seen before. And so by being at the right edge there, that means it's a really low angle signal. Is the high angle signals would be over the zenith? Okay.
That's right. And there's not many high angle signals. You don't expect that on 20 meters.
Right. But it would hear them if they were there because it points the whole sky.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if there was something there, you would hear it.
Yep, band's dying. Perfect.
That's it.
Congratulations. That was your science project that made that recording. That's amazing.
It is. Yeah, that's my science project.
Well, I'm glad you got the time on that array. That's pretty cool.
No, I was very happy with that. So I'm open to ideas, suggestions. This is a dialogue. This is not a lecture. So thank you guys for listening and for talking and contributing. And
well, thanks for a totally unique presentation.
I look forward to talking more.
Well, thanks, Peter. Any questions?
Keep up the good work.
Can you transmit on that thing?
No, and it would only be really good for high angle, I think.
Okay.
See you in the winter rack.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter, this is Tom, NW6P. Can you hear me?
I hear you well, Tom.
I was a member of the Bell Labs Radio Club when I was a teenager. And after studying electrical engineering, I started a modem company. And you probably heard it. It was called Badic. And our claim to fame was we invented a full Duquest 1200 baud modem, and it was pretty successful. We kept it going for 15 years and then sold it to a British firm. So when I read your bio that you were a member of the Bell Labs Radio Club, electrical engineer, me too. Started a modem company. You worked on modems. Again, I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, well, thank you. I got your note and I appreciate your note. And, there's more things to talk about.
Yeah.
Besides contesting, but let's, keep the dialogue going. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? If not, thanks, Peter, and really appreciate your presentation and really neat stuff. Thank you.
Good one.
Great.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's continue the conversation.
That's
Get
great.
the contests, digital contests happening and make them fun.
Okay, well, I think kind of late. I think we should probably wrap it up. Get something to eat.